But you got to ask for it.
And we're only 4 minutes late.
Because they don't
So
put it
there we go.
on display. You just ask them
I think
how
we're
many birds
on.
you might have.
I'm gonna eat some of Bill's birthday cookie here.
Peyote salad.
Wait, what kind of club are we having now?
Cinnamon gel.
All right.
But the other place we found it is in the Guaymas market, the inside market. Yeah, and in the central. I think
The place that sells tea.
yeah, it sells all kinds of tea. It's about halfway in the middle aisle and about halfway down the whole thing.
Round, short, it's got a label on it.
Well,
Tells you all the things it's good for, sciatica.
Maybe I could cancel my doctor appointment. Good, how are you?
You can get it in green, red, clear. I got a bottle of red, green, and clear. Is it helping you?
The flag.
I've used one whole jar.
What's the deal? Is there a different?
22 people.
I don't know.
All right.
No, different colors.
Well, I had my.
It's like Mexican.
I never count.
Green and red.
Ah.
But they're about 100 pesos.
They're all in my name. But, so they told me I could put Windows 10 in it. It didn't matter. I couldn't even, and actually,
But you have Windows 10.
Well, Gerald
now I have regular Windows 10.
where is
Bob's here. Hey, Bob.
She went to.
I tried to get a hold of you, but I couldn't get a hold of
Eventually,
you.
went to Canelli
And
after she had gotten some of
this guy
this.
Kent
And
with
he told her
Verizon,
what
we
was
talked
wrong
with him
and
2
the
weeks ago.
exercises
Okay.
to do. And she said, well, I've
And
been
he
using
put me
marijuana
off
gel.
for
And
1
he says,
week.
well,
And he said he
it
would
might
be
be
here
better to
today.
take it internal.
Oh,
We are not important enough.
Might work better than
He stood me up.
that's okay.
Okay, but he said that he would like to come. He's apparently talking to Jim.
Jim sent me a message last week saying that he would not be here this week, but next week.
Okay, well, Jim never called. I spent a half an hour talking to him.
Okay.
And I'm not too impressed with the fact
well,
that
let
he
me
stood
see.
us up. But you weren't here because you were
There's
sick.
one.
And I tried to get a hold of you, didn't get you. And so he says he's going to come next week. I frankly think it would be good to have him and Cyberco come. Both
Maybe.
they're in
I
competition.
told her.
Oh, well, I mean,
The reason I say that is that you know and I know
I'm not sure if he meant
that you got to
gel
have
or
a device
just
to make the windows. If you want to
that might be
operate
pretty
with
nasty taste.
your cell
Okay?
phone, this Kent guy says that Cyberco is using old
It smells
technology.
just
Well, they
like
probably
the
are.
old
Probably are.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
bag
But
liniment
the
we used
security
to use
thing
on
is his big
at
thing.
home on the milk cows.
And
It
to
smells
make
just
your windows
like
go up and down,
well,
to make
this
your
was
stove
called,
work,
it
to
was
make your
something different, but I
refrigerator
think
work,
that's what
you
it
got to
was.
have some sort of a control.
Oh, it is.
You got to have that.
Cut
Yeah.
or something.
And nobody's going to spend all that money.
It was in the barn,
to
so
do
you
that.
can take it out.
well, I think what we're interested in is what he's offering as far as that
I
stuff
know.
goes. Yeah.
He says he's offering everything.
That's cool.
Oh, well, yeah,
Oh.
yeah, but the thing is,
Oh, no.
he doesn't really have a local company. He's using somebody back east, and so you call, and they call the police.
Okay.
Okay, and Cyberco, they're doing it locally. They know the cops that are crooked. Okay? Well, there
Okay.
are some.
Well, I mean, I hear what you're saying, and it would probably be good to talk to them as well, but I don't think they're offering anything different than they have for years.
They're going to be.
Well, and that would be a good reason to bring them in.
Because competition is forcing them.
Sure.
Okay,
Yeah.
and that's good.
Yeah.
But I was a little disappointed.
Okay.
I gotta tell you that.
Well, I don't know them from Adam. I haven't met them. I don't know them from Adam. I haven't met them. I don't know what they're offering. No, I don't know them at all.
It's legal all the way.
And so this would be a good opportunity to get to know them. And
That's why I stopped.
oh, okay.
I stopped about 4 or 5 days after we talked about it.
Oh, good.
Okay, and I won't be here. Ed won't be here next week.
Okay.
And the other couple, down the end of the day, people are leaving, and so I was disappointed because I wanted to hear it.
Well, we're going to make a point of trying to get a good recording of him like we did with Marco Cruz, and his information will be on YouTube so you can watch it later.
Pretty funny that, we got
Hey, we're 10 minutes over. Should we get started?
Get rid of a
walk
post
into
that
the
just
store
posted
and
you.
it's got displays.
Yeah. And I've got it
They
on
had
3
a
times.
special,
Get
they had
rid
a
of it.
special on it.
One of them, 2 of them.
It was caramel apple.
What if you just refresh your screen? Huh.
I just eat it by the spoon.
I think you need more friends. I'm sorry.
Please, I just got rid of 20.
Scott, this is what's online?
Welcome. Are you not online?
That's what's online.
That is the audio feed, which probably can't show up in that form on your pad. Okay, welcome, one and all. I'm back. I'm like 85% here. I was death warmed over last week, and I appreciate you guys going on without me. I'm really sorry I couldn't have been here. But I'm happy to be here now. I am Scott Stimson, and this is the San Carlos Computer Club. This is a large group. At last count, Russ told me we had 23 people. Is that number including me, or am I 24? Yeah, it's hard to get respect in this group.
We had more people last week than I've been feeling today.
Thank you, Ed.
10 pesos will count.
All right. Well, so we've done, what is this? We're on our second week. I've been gone for a week. Did you guys cover anything interesting last week?
Breakfast menu.
Breakfast menu. Okay, as long as we had that covered. Mike, you're holding up your hand. You're anxious to tell us some stuff.
A week ago Sunday, you can find this on YouTube, John Oliver had almost a whole show on Bitcoin.
That was great.
Yeah, okay, yeah, it was fun, and a lot of it was stuff we had talked about in this class. So it was really cool to be able to watch and go, yeah, I know how those things relate, yeah. And the other thing is, we also talked about hacking, and the last day or two there's been a little bit of news about the hackers from Russia in our power system, and they have the capability now of shutting it down.
Yes.
There wasn't a story about what we might have been doing to theirs at all, so I'm not sure what's going on there.
Well, as far as the John Oliver, I would recommend seeing that John Oliver on Bitcoin. I thought it was really well done.
One of my favorite stats is I think he said either 1,500 or 15,000 copycats.
I think it was 1,500. I don't think it was 15,000. I think it was 1,500.
Which one do you pick?
But yeah, that really, and where a lot of this is turning into this pump and dump scheme where they're just trying to entice and falsify this market so that they gain in value so that they can sell them again. So the same people that are developing these new schemes are buying them up to make them look like they're valuable until they get suckers to buy in, and then they
just like penny stocks. Yeah, whatever. Yeah, whatever.
Scott? Scott?
Yeah, Bob.
I would like to bring something up. Zuckerberg is being grilled, and there's a number of us that want to be low profile here in San Carlos. And I even wondered about your broadcasting worldwide. And I would be curious to see.
What are you hiding?
Oh, it is.
George?
No, that's $15,000.
I know Maggie.
On Beanie
That wasn't
Bubbies.
it?
No. Say that again, Bob. I'm sorry.
I would like to know how many people would like to be
Oh,
low
excuse me.
profile here in San Carlos instead of published
Oh,
worldwide.
it's this.
It could be that. Yeah.
Anybody?
Does this go against?
Oh, I know.
I hope everybody knows that I put this on YouTube. I hope nobody shows up that doesn't want to be on YouTube.
What are you hiding, Bob?
Yeah, Bob. Bob, here, let me get focused in on your face for a moment. What is your concern? We've been recording these meetings since 2009 as audio. And we switched, we're doing audio and video since February of last year. And I think everybody that shows up knows I do this. And I hope you don't show up if you want to be private.
If you don't have fingerprints raise your hand.
Was this it?
Zuckerberg knows, he knows everything about every one of us right here. I think that's a
Oh,
good
yeah.
line.
Is this the one as the only Bitcoin explainer?
I think so, yeah.
It was March 12th?
It was, yeah, just like last week. It's a great one to watch. It's a good primer on Bitcoin. Now, what Mike's talking about all the different ones, like the 1,500 copycats of Bitcoin. I mean, these are the things that people need to be concerned about. Is are you getting into a legitimate source? I don't think I'm not an investment consultant at all. I would never recommend somebody go out and buy into one of these schemes hoping they're going to make money. I think that's a really dangerous thing to do. I think John Oliver does a really good job of making that clear. When we talk about Bitcoins here, what we're talking about is the future of currency. We're talking about where we're going to what we're going to be dealing with as currency in the future, and it's not going to be greenbacks in your wallet. It's going to be a different technology altogether. And if it's not the actual Bitcoin or one of these 1,500 spin-offs, it's going to be something very similar to it. It's obvious we're seeing the path to the future with currency, and it's very obvious it's going to be something of this nature.
I don't think something has to back up the value, other than
what backs up the current value?
a hope, other than a hope that somebody else is going to buy it for more than I want.
Well,
I agree. Exactly. The dollar bill is backed by the economy of the country. Same as same way the Spain is backed up somewhat by the economy of the country. Peso, Mexico, somewhat by. Can it be manipulated? Absolutely. There is a value there based on the economy.
Well, those other currencies are shooting for the same goal. They want to be in the same position. Read the economy as the dollar bill is.
They don't have an economy. Bitcoin has a computer. They don't have an economy that backs it up. They don't have the sale of refrigerators and automobiles and no, there is no economy that Bitcoin backs.
Well, I think the point you're trying to make, Gary, is that there's no tangible goods that back up the value of a Bitcoin. And I think Gary's point is there never has been. I mean, from the moment we went off the gold standard, there was no tangible good that was backing up the dollar.
That's what I'm saying. There is tangible, and the tangible is
Well, you don't.
the trading that goes on.
Maybe that can collapse.
Whichever country it is, why is the U.S. value different than the Spanish value or Spain different than Portugal? It's because of the economy within those countries.
Well, I mean, we could have a big Bitcoin debate again if you'd like. I do think that there is something to be said for we have faith-based currency. We allow our government to print money and pull money out of circulation based on their speculation. And there's something to be said for it not being based on a tangible good. And that if we're going to run a currency like that, then there are better ways to secure that value. And three of the fundamental points that Theo was trying to get me to express, and that I feel like I'm getting a better and better perception of it, is the immutable database, where every single transaction is never forgotten, so you know exactly where value is derived, where you can't say that about the dollar. I mean, dollars are pulled out of circulation all the time. They're printed all the time. We raise and lower based on inflation rates. And the agreement, which we have as far as the dollar goes, we've all agreed to use that system. And this critical mass idea that there is enough checks out there, there's enough independent people, I'm trying to generalize this. I don't want to get into the technology. There's enough independent apparatuses that intrinsically do not trust the system, that they are checking everyone else's work, so that somebody isn't, for lack of a better terminology, just printing out money. That you've got enough entities out there that are saying that's got to be true because this one over here says it's true, this one over here says it's true, this one over here. So yours is false. You have added $200 to this, for lack of better terminology. There's enough of that critical mass that it is backed up, and the way, I mean, it's backed up the value that's being said to be derived from it.
So the Bitcoin has a finite value. All Bitcoins in the world have a finite number, not a value, but a finite number of Bitcoins. So there's 83 trillion Bitcoins.
Right. They say by 2100 all of them will have been developed.
And there can never be more than that.
That's right.
Okay, so that's wealth. Okay, that's like a pie of wealth. Think about the world before Microsoft. There was a certain amount of wealth in the world before Microsoft. When Microsoft came along and created computers and all the things that are generated from that, it didn't start from that pie of wealth in 1975 or 1980. It expanded that wealth worldwide. So wealth and value is not finite. Bitcoin is finite, and all that will ever happen is those 38 trillion Bitcoins will go up or down in value based on supply and demand. It will not create, cannot create more wealth from that. So the one Bitcoin that was worth $1 20 years or 10 years ago, whatever, is now worth, went up to 20,000, now it's down to 10,000. That's the same as the gold standard. So on the gold standard, I understand people don't like the manipulation of the Fed. I don't like that either necessarily. But the gold standard also is the only value of gold is based on supply and demand. It's based on that limited quantity. Now a little bit more is mined every year, but it's that finite quantity. There has been an incredible amount of wealth created because of Bill Gates in the world. And that is because we have an ability of the currency to expand in value. There's not a finite amount of wealth in the world. Otherwise, when you get a job, you take some money, you've taken potentially money out of my pocket. And there's people that think that. But that's not the case. Wealth grows with innovation.
Excuse me, what makes it finite?
What?
What sets the amount of it?
The amount of Bitcoin?
Oh, well,
I don't know that
in the practical terms, in the terms, the physical terms, it is set by an algorithm. And so right from the beginning, when this was created, it was created to have a limited number of coins that could be produced.
So it could be changed?
No.
Why not?
Well, no, because it's been purposely derived like that. The algorithms that were made. I mean, please, I am not a Bitcoin expert, so I can't tell you exactly the mechanics of how it works. What I understand. Silence your cell phones, please. Ed.
Value of a dollar.
Sorry, folks,
Yeah.
in New York.
I think he wants to change the subject.
But to answer your question, if you can just take for granted there's a black box, and the rules of that box are there's only so many that can come out of it. And it's been built, it's been backed up with mathematics, and it's not going to happen. There's just no way to make more because of the way they've designed it. And another aspect of the way they've designed it is that each time Bitcoins are mined, it becomes harder to mine more of them because there's less of them.
Does anybody own all of it? Is it all in possession of anybody?
You mean,
Debate.
well,
Yeah, there's a
if you
finite-
think about there being a finite number of Bitcoins that can be created, then there is a section of those that have not been created yet. So those are in question. And it's the question of who's going to get those by the miners. They're the ones that are working. Now, the miners are the ones that are backing up the transaction, this blockchain transaction. They're the one that's verifying that immutable database is correct. And they do it through a process of encryption algorithms. I'm sorry, I have to be vague because I'm not an expert in this. But what they're doing is they're running mathematics on the blockchain to verify that it is the correct transactions, and they are and when they are the fastest to do it, then they are awarded bitcoins out of that.
But isn't this kind of like this giant group of people that are in control that are like the mafia or they're like something else? They're like a group controlling everything, and so that group can do whatever they want. Is that not true?
Boy, I am not the right person to comment on that.
Just thought
How
of
can
that.
it succeed when it can be abused so easily?
That's
If it's
Who's the they?
exactly. That's my whole
Right.
point. Is it
I
like
mean, like if you wanted to be a miner, you could be a miner. So
but
all of a
there's
sudden,
only this group of people that are miners, and who's to say that those miners aren't in cahoots with? Well, obviously they are, or they wouldn't all be miners, right?
but whatever your let's take real miners for instance. If you were mining for gold, who cares what your motivations are?
Because we don't know the limit. See, there's supposedly a limit. I don't think that's happening now, but I think the potential for
Fair.
Well,
is almost inevitable.
the reason we use the analogy of a miner is because mining for gold is very similar. You can logically deduce that there is a limited amount of gold that could ever be discovered. And the more gold that is discovered, the least likely you are to discover more gold. Because you are pulling that gold, you're surfacing that gold. Well, it is. It's fixed to however much that material is available on our planet.
They thought that in 1980s that the oil was going to run out in 10 years too. You know, all of a sudden now oil.
No, I'm not talking about it running out. I'm talking about there is a fixed amount of oil. There is a fixed amount. The resources are fixed to our planet.
But there's no fixed amount
We
of
don't know what
alternatives.
to do.
Right, but it's flexible. That's
Yeah, the big difference is we don't know how much there is in total.
right.
Yeah.
So I think what, Scott, you brought up as far as the fixed amount, what's the diamond group puts out?
That's why the
Beers,
the beers. Yeah.
The Beers controls that market. They put out as many diamonds as they want to control the value of the diamond. And they can flood the market and they can drop the value, or they can hold back and keep the value, which is what they do.
So that's a very good point, and another reason for this immutable database is that the only way that a Bitcoin has value is for it to be in the blockchain. And the moment it's in the blockchain, everyone's aware of it. So those diamonds you're talking about being held back, they can't be held back. Everybody knows where they are. They directly affect the value. The people that have control of those, I'm calling Bitcoins diamonds at the moment, that control those diamonds, have no choice but to release that information. It immediately affects that market. They can't just store them in a cupboard and wait till later to drop them out into the market.
So they're in the market all the time.
At the moment that they're created, they're in the market.
So we thought they were all created at once, like God, created everything.
No. They're created. These Bitcoins are created as rewards for the processing of the validation of the immutable database.
Okay, Scott. So what happens hypothetically?
It's called proof of stake.
Hypothetically now, one person or one group owns all of the Bitcoin.
No.
Has all the wealth of the world. Well, it's a tradable commodity.
Well, is this your analogy?
It's a hypothetical situation.
If somebody were to get a hold of all the Bitcoins?
Basically rule the world. And people have been trying to do that since Adam and Eve.
Yeah, I don't even know how to address it. What I do know is that it is not possible to mine Bitcoins to its entirety until 2100, I think, is the date that they expect the last Bitcoin to spit out. So there will always be more Bitcoins, and by 2100, we're probably going to have a completely different system. Like one of my points with this that I'm getting closer and closer to it, we have to decide on what one of these systems we want currency to move to, and we need to decide it quick because pretty soon our government's going to get in bed with Google, They're going to be putting together cryptocurrency. It's going to be controlled by a central authority, and you'll lose all control over what you derive value from.
Amazon will send it out.
I think that's a genuine fear for the future, is that this is an opportunity for us to decide how we exchange value with each other. And it's derived by nothing more than our agreement to use it. Whereas if the government gets involved in it, then what we've got is cryptocurrency based on Federal Reserve.
So what happens if you don't want to agree? You get shot?
If you don't want to agree, you don't exchange in it. Just like any other currency. If you don't want to spend pesos, you don't spend pesos.
No, I'll tell you this. If you want to make God laugh, tell him the plan. I'm serious. I really think this is a philosophical discussion that is going nowhere. I really do.
Mm-hmm.
I wish we could get back to computers.
Oh, it's kind of interesting.
It is. It's interesting, yeah. It's like looking at your belly button.
Like,
Yeah.
How many angels can dance on the head of a pin?
Well, again, I keep qualifying myself by saying I'm not an expert in the technology. I've become very familiar with the concepts, but there are some really good questions here. I think that it all deserves more research. I think we can't help but imagine that this is good. This is where currency is going. We've seen the abuse of currency in its current form. Just counterfeiting. We have sanctioned counterfeiting. We have unsanctioned counterfeiting. We have controls of the market.
Money laundering.
The discussion is great, but the thought that this is the direction of currency, I think that is.
The concept of no privacy, of all of your deals being out there for everyone to look at, is offensive, and I don't think I'm the only one that would feel that way.
Mm-hmm.
Which would lead me to go around to the barter system again. It may be self-defeating in that respect.
It is the barter system.
No, the private barter system.
Well, that goes on all the time.
Trade a horse for a cow.
It goes on all the time.
Well, no one's denying that, but what I'm saying is the idea that every transaction is on record forever.
Well,
Everything's public record. Right?
Now, you don't deal with cash.
Well, Scott, to your point, one thing that we've all seen over the past 10 years is the disappearance of cash from the economy.
mm-hmm.
I mean, you go into a bank, rarely do that anymore, but I can go to it and say, well, you don't see any checks there anymore. When people cash the checks and the stack gets up at 3 o'clock in the afternoon, they got this many checks that run through the thing.
Yeah.
It might be 1, 2.
Right.
It's just all wired. So either you switch the dollar to that, which seems to be happening now, or you switch to another form.
A check is no different than wiring. It's different.
But you're not going to be carrying stuff around. It's going to be phone at this point, where you actually spend
More
money.
electronic.
Yeah, electronic. Where there won't be cash in your pocket at some point.
Hardly ever cash in our pocket except we live down here.
There's a lot of cash in my pocket.
I think this is the Wells Fargo.
Think about it. In the US, you wouldn't use any cash. Did I just hit it?
You did, but that's
Oh.
okay.
In the US, you wouldn't use any cash, but that's all you use down here.
Yeah,
Usually you just use your ATM card no matter where you go. You use an ATM card.
Credit card will take your money back.
All I know is that when you went to the grocery store and used the check, you had to wait for somebody to write a check out like that, you know, it takes a certain amount of time. And then we had credit cards, and you swipe it, and that takes a lot less time. Now you put it in and wait longer for that card to come back than you to write a check.
Or you have to put it in
Yeah, but
twice.
except you can do it with these. You just go by and.
You have a check.
Yes.
Yeah. I know I'm from a slightly different generation than most of you folks. I don't use cash unless I have to. I mean, absolutely. I've been here for 20 years, and it was such an amazing change to go from having to carry cash all the time to being able to just use a card everywhere I go. I appreciate the immutable database concept. I think that every transaction that's happening should be on record. I think that if you have a problem with your transaction being on record, then maybe you're doing something sketchy. Why would you have any problems with the? And actually, let me take a step, walk that back. That's not my point. My point is the value is derived in knowing where the money has come from.
But why not have the expectation of privacy?
Well, I mean, there is a limited level of privacy, but then there's some investigation that can be done to associate those transactions. I mean, just like any other situation where large amounts of cash end up in a marketplace and you can't figure out where they came from, you can follow serial numbers. You can see where that money went. You can do that in fact, you can do that inherently with Bitcoin, with this immutable database. But it's not saying Scott Stimson spent $20 on comic books. It's not saying that in the immutable database. It's got a hash algorithm. Or a hash number that is related to one particular transaction between two entities for a specific amount. Each one of those entities is an encrypted number. So you'd have to track each one of those transactions back to their own public key, associate that with a private key, to be aware of who was doing that transaction.
So you're saying there are some safeguards.
Well, I mean, I guess it depends on what you mean by safeguards. If somebody needed to know where this money came from, there would be a way to track it back. But like, look at what's going on with Facebook right now. Right, this thing about all this information that Cambridge Analytica got a hold of. Up until 2015, it was very possible for a third party to build an application that you would agree to play with that would allow them to have access to your friends' information. Right? And the only thing that's stopping that right now is policies in Facebook. And the reason Cambridge Analytica was so successful is because nobody realized that they could track, or they could dial it down into these very key pieces of personality. And when they realized that, they immediately changed their policy, and they're trying to make it a legal issue. But none of their developers that are developing programs for Facebook now are allowed to have access to these third-party information. You can't get Paul's personal information from me playing a quiz on Facebook, but you can definitely get my information from me playing a quiz on Facebook. It's this interrelation of information, and so safeguards. I mean, is what is it that we're trying to safeguard against? Do you not want people to know what you spent money on?
Yeah.
Then, if there becomes if somebody has a vested interest in knowing what you spent money in, then there's going to be a way to track it back to you. But I would argue that that's the case right now. I mean, if somebody has a vested interest in knowing where this money came from, where it went, they can track it back to you.
If it was cash,
She just said, and I agree with her, unless it's cash, except for large property purchases, not necessarily property, but large, then it would be.
But small transactions.
It's the idea of it, I think, I find so offensive.
I think you're right. I think the idea of it is what stifles most people from opening their mind to these ideas. We are going to look at a currency culture change. The same way we have with the social media change and the information change, there is going to be this cultural change on how we view currency works in our world. And we're just at the beginning of that right now. I mean, that's the reason this becomes a heated debate, is people can't imagine where we're going to be 20 years from now.
Yeah. Yeah. Most all of us.
Yeah.
Me, I'm not gonna be
I know it's something.
I'm gonna be skeptical.
And with that, go ahead, Mike.
I have a
there's
computer
a
thing.
human nature aspect to this. In other words, if there are 1,500 other competitors to Bitcoin, chances are 100 of those are all being developed by one group or one person who may have nefarious plans about how they do it. So I just think there's a whole big problem with trying to get the trust, even though it's immutable. One other one who might win out later might not be. And then you got the whole thing about if the government gets involved with Google and does this, who's going to pay the lobbyists on each side to help it or fight it or that? So there's a lot of human nature stuff involved here.
I think that's the reason we need to be having these conversations.
Oh, yeah, I don't disagree with that.
Is because fear, uncertainty, and doubt is going to push people to government protect us. Government, we want you to be involved in this. Google, we trust you. You're one of our favorite entities. These two entities are going to come together and just push it down our throat what we decide we should exchange value with. And once again, we will have lost any say in the way things are done.
Mathematics are
right.
And that's what the basic theory on. But people are not immutable. People are dishonest.
Right.
And this is so ripe for abuse or control that I feel it's got to evolve. I agree with you. The system, like everything, evolves, but not the way it's going. I agree with him. I think it's bad.
Jim.
One last thought. Isn't it true that the whole process of mining is based on an algorithm, if you will, that makes each transaction more difficult than the one before? And so it takes more and more computer power, more and more energy. As you get closer and closer and closer to that finite number, ever increasing amounts of computer power and energy. So the cost of production of that Bitcoin is continuing to escalate.
Gary.
Yep.
Okay, but who has all the Bitcoins?
Well,
the Russians?
Is who can get...
They might have all the Bitcoins.
Yeah, I think the question is who has access to the capability for mining.
Yeah.
You know, you and I can buy the equipment, but it's getting more and more expensive and it requires more and more energy. Our costs, our legitimate costs go up. But the criminal element, using botnets and putting malicious software on millions of computers worldwide,
right?
They don't have that expense. So, you know, there's three ways, I guess, to get one. You buy it, get paid, you buy a Bitcoin, or you get paid for services with a Bitcoin, or you mine Bitcoin. And you and I have costs that are immutable and increasing. But you can avoid those costs if you are operating an illegitimate enterprise. And so, you know, back to what you were saying earlier.
Well, I believe that's the way most of the Bitcoins are being mined, by using our bandwidth and our computers. They're actually, I don't know if they're stealing it, but they're using it.
There's some truth to that. There's been.
Once in a while you read about half a billion.
But who owns all the Bitcoins? Who owns all the Bitcoins?
Mr. Bitcoin does.
You know, if
Well,
you
those
could
are registered
follow
that
that money, I think you would be very interesting to see. Bitcoin? You're right. Most of Bitcoin being owned by criminal enterprises of one kind or another.
Yeah.
Even if they're doing their own entrepreneurial, they're not paying for it. They're not giving value for value. They're taking it and using, so basically using our computers.
Correct.
All we know, everybody here is mining, and we don't know about it.
Well, I mean, there is something to that. We've already watched as some websites have put miners on computers. You go and visit a website, and while you're there at the website, it's mining for them, and they're linking all these computers together into one big supercomputer to do mining. There's I can't remember which government was it that discovered that somebody had put Bitcoin miners across all the government computers and had them all heading to one wallet. I don't remember it being the U.S. Was it the U.K.? I think it was the U.K. discovered this in their government networks. Was that this was? I mean, these things will happen just like in any other play. Crime pays. People, there aren't criminals if it doesn't pay. Crime does pay. And so these are issues that we're dealing with. Russia has made a huge investment in a Bitcoin infrastructure because they can get power a lot cheaper in Russia than they can get it because they control that whole network of. This is all very interesting. I'm sorry I'm not more of an expert in this topic. I can't answer all your questions, but I appreciate all your opinions. Your TV's buffer. Let's get back to real important stuff.
Okay, I have,
Hey, go ahead, Linda. What do you got?
okay.
I got some other topics, but what do you got?
Okay, 2 years ago, when they brought out Windows 10, I think it's 2 years about right now. And
yeah,
they
maybe a little
and
few
you
more than that.
downloaded Windows 10 and you started. How many people got Windows 10 Pro put on their computer? Okay,
Pro or home?
Windows 10 Pro.
Okay.
Okay, I got Windows 10 Pro put on both of our laptops 2 years ago. I did this latest update on my computer, and I got this notice that I had Windows 10 Pro, and they can't update it. So I started going on the Microsoft Help website, and there's so many people that they're telling you now you can't have Windows 10 Pro. Okay, so I called up Microsoft. First, I called up Lenovo, and the thing was, I didn't have my Windows number. You know, the big
What operating
number.
system did your computer start with?
8.1.
Okay.
Okay. My husband started with 7.
Okay.
His is still on there as of yesterday. But anyway, so I had 8.1. I did not have my number. I went through all this rigmarole on the computer, and I finally got my number. Now I went and found his number to make sure. So I got our operating number, and then I started calling Microsoft and telling them what's happening. One person calls and tells me it's going to cost me $499. I went, are you joking? I said, I can go buy a new computer for $499. I called, it took me about 4 days. The other night, I finally got somebody. She says, well, you'll have to put Windows 10 Home back in. I said, fine. But I went to Windows Store, where your number and all that is supposed to be. There was nothing there.
Well,
So she had me go there first. I went in there. I go, there's nothing there to show that I have it. And the notes keep saying, well, go back to Windows and get your copy, and it'll update it. There's nothing there. So we wound up putting Windows Home back in my computer and wiping my whole computer.
Well, that is the solution. I don't know how you ended up
That's the
with
only
Pro.
solution.
How did you end up with
My
Pro?
husband's has Pro in it too. That's what they gave us.
Who's they?
Windows, 2 years ago, when they were downloading in the very beginning, I went in and I got it, and it gave me Windows 10 Pro. Now, my husband still has Windows 10 Pro. It did the update.
So to the best of my
And
knowledge,
his is okay. How
the
come
only
mine
reason you
isn't?
would have ended up with Pro is because you had Windows 7 for Business, or you had
No.
Windows 8.1 Pro.
It shows I had Windows Home in it.
Well, that's
When we
what
went
that's what
back
you
to
should
the
have gotten
number.
originally.
Right, when he went back to the number, it shows that I have Windows 10 Pro. I went back and did one of those, I looked it up. Shows you how to go back in there and get your numbers.
But
And nobody saves their numbers. And now, if you have an old computer that you put 10 in, you got to go back and find your numbers.
So
because they don't put them on the bottom of your laptops anymore.
Okay, so there's a lot here, Linda. Let me say, Windows 7, if you did the upgrade to Windows 10, then there is a database, Microsoft has a database that has changed your Windows 7 authorization code to a Windows 10 authorization code. And that definitely works. I've had to use it in the past. And so if you've got a sticker on your laptop that has a product code for Windows 7, and you did the Windows 10 upgrade during the upgrade period, then you can install Windows 10 fresh and use your Windows 7 code and it will install.
But the Windows, both the laptops,
Now,
neither one of them have the numbers
since
on the
Windows 8, there are no codes on the laptops because the code is stored in the BIOS of your computer unless you built the computer yourself. Then you should have bought a Windows 8 install that gave you a card that has your number on it, and it was your responsibility to hang on to that number. Your laptop should have the code in the BIOS, and you shouldn't need to know the number because when you're installing Windows 10, it pulls it out of your BIOS.
Well, I went and put a program in and it brought it up.
Well, yeah, I mean, you can do that too, but it shouldn't be necessary.
Well,
Now, the question in my mind is, how'd you end up with Pro in the first
I
place?
got it on both the laptops. That's what they gave me. You know when they were way back in the very beginning and you could download the programs?
Yeah, no, you can still download Windows 10.
Yeah, now you can, but in the very beginning they were giving out like
Are you talking before the public release? You're talking about when you were doing when they were having the Insiders program and you were trying it out in beta?
Right.
Okay.
I put it on both our laptops, and they both have Pro. So anyway, I did this new Windows update.
So Linda, the terms of that beta testing is that at any moment you may lose access to that version.
But all
That's
this
not-
time I've had it.
Yeah, but that's the unfortunate thing about being part of, and if you are part of the Insiders program, I mean, you can put out special requests to get that back, but they haven't been fulfilling those.
Well, I just changed it back to Windows Home.
Well, Windows
But I
Home
was
is what you were
surprised
supposed to have.
See, it had a big red thing on it telling me that they couldn't contact the server from my company or whatever it was. Okay, but
Because of
now,
Pro.
if you go into Windows 10 and everybody on the help section,
Yeah. I think the distinction here is Pro versus Home. I think that's the issue that you're
but if you
describing.
go in, all
And
these
unless you
people,
paid for a Pro version, like if you had a business version of Windows 7
right,
and did the legitimate upgrade, you would have ended up on Pro.
right.
And maybe that's the case with your
That's what
husband's
I did.
computer. Maybe
Both
that
of
was.
us.
But your Windows A1, was that a business license that you had, or so somehow you got Pro into your computer, but that's not what was intended by the free upgrade program.
Well, that's what they gave.
Okay.
So his still has it, and he hasn't gotten the notice. So I said, I'll just keep watching and see if he gets the notice. So I got the notice and wound up having to put Home back in it, which is fine. It cleaned off my computer.
Yeah, that's frustrating.
Got rid of all the crap. Probably.
But I don't believe that's a problem that most people are going to run into. I know from the way that the upgrade system works and what the requirements were, the majority of people that have computers, the majority of folks like yourselves, will have these home versions of Windows 7, home versions of Windows 8 and 8.1. And if you had taken advantage of that Windows 10 free upgrade, you would have ended up with the home version. You wouldn't have ended up with the Pro version.
What if your hard drive crashed and you had a new hard drive put in, and my son installed Windows 7 back on it? It used to be 10,
Okay, so
and he installed Windows 7 back on it, but
If-
think it was from
if he used the 7 code that's on the sticker on your laptop that used to have Windows 10, then you can use that number to upgrade to 10. In fact, it shouldn't ask you for a number. You should be able to upgrade to 10 and just go straight to 10 because their database will see your currently legitimate number from 7.
They will see it even though the hard drive is
Yes, yes.
We'll try it.
Yeah, and we should now be living in a world where if you buy a name brand computer, you're not having to worry about these codes. These codes should be intrinsic. When you buy an HP, you buy a Dell, you buy a Lenovo, you buy an Asus, the code for your operating system is etched into the BIOS. And so whatever that code allows you to have will be allowed to be installed. And it shouldn't be asking you for a code. Now, I recently had to do something on Ron's computer. I recently had to put Windows 10 back on Ron's computer. And it asked me during the install for my Windows code. And I don't have it because it's a Windows 8 computer. It's ingrained in the BIOS, but the install asked me for the code. Under the install code, there's a link that says, skip this for now. Now, before skipping it, I thought that's really fishy. So I went out and I researched it. And apparently, if you've got a computer that has the BIOS, has the code in the BIOS, this is the proper procedure. You skip it, it finishes the install, it activates online, and you're done with it. It never asks you for a code again.
I updated two computers, one with 7, one with 8.1.
Yeah.
The 7 went without a hitch. Never gave me trouble. The 8.1, every time another automatic update came along, it would turn away all night long, and then in the morning, it hadn't gone anywhere. So I shut it off, turn it back on, and it says reverting to.
Yeah, Gary, we're familiar with that issue. Unfortunately, that's not an issue with verifying updates, but it's more verifying installs. That's a problem you're having with the update system.
But is it unique to 8.1 or?
No, it's unique to your particular computer.
Of course it is.
My phone.
Yes.
Okay, so going to this update situation, and I know this was discussed before in the past, what all of the programs are doing now, which is ethically wrong and dishonest, is I bought a lot of programs. I always pay for my programs like Wicked and Word and all of these other products I use. And they're licensed software, and there was no contingency that I have to pay for it again. But now, every time I've eliminated all updates on all of my programs, because every time they update, they embed now with a scheme to make you pay for it again.
I no longer use Word because of
like
that.
printers. Printers don't print anymore unless you use their ink, unless there's a way to bypass it.
Yep.
Hopefully there is, but when I downloaded the fix, it didn't work, and, that kind of thing. So I have an expensive all-in-one printer that I don't even use now, because they basically lost.
Is this the region coding that we are starting to see now, where if it's a printer bought in the United States, you can't use Mexican ink on it?
Yep.
This is happening. We've had a couple of reports in this club. Yeah. It's not that issue.
It's the issue of the fact that they want you to upgrade. Like you said, every time I open up that Quicken now, which I've used more years than I can remember, it now has a notice. We want to upgrade. That's because I did a. So now I've eliminated all these automatic upgrades. Like Windows, the problem she ran into. If she never upgraded, she never had a problem. And this is the scheme that all the companies are using to get the current income.
Well, you're not wrong about that. The Windows is Windows as a service now, not as software, and so you're forced to take these upgrades as they come. And there are, hinky problems with it. I've got a computer from 2007 that was just fine until the latest Windows update, and now if I put it to sleep, it wakes up and crashes. And it's because the computer has an unsupported video card, which is exactly the kind of thing that Microsoft would say, don't install Windows 10 on this computer because we don't support the video card. But I went ahead and did it anyway because I'm me. And now it's crashing whenever it comes out of sleep. Now, my options are to put on an old Windows piece of software, like go back to Windows 7, which would be fine, except they're not going to make security updates for it anymore, and they're not going to make feature updates for it, or go to a Linux operating system or buy a new computer. So, until it's completely unfunctional, I'm going to continue to let it upgrade to Windows 10. I just leave it on all the time now. I don't let it go to sleep. The computer's 11 years old. It's the only reason it still runs is because it's my computer. Somebody else would have chucked it in the trash a long time ago. And if it's still running after it's unfunctional under Windows, I always joke that Microsoft is upgrading me to Linux. Right? They're doing automatic upgrades until I'm running Linux.
Well, I just had a problem with my printer. It did an update. Okay, and they said I couldn't use the ink. I wound up going to buy a whole new set of ink and put it in. It wouldn't take the ink cartridges that were in there.
Is this the region code problem? The
No,
one where it's...
No, this is Epson. And the ink was bought in the U.S. and everything, but I did the update, and it wouldn't work. It wanted new cartridges, and so I wound up ordering new cartridges and waiting for them to come.
Have you tried taking your model number and Googling it with the word class action? Just to make sure you're not the only one out there that's having this problem.
Oh, I don't know. I just,
Good
Yeah.
idea.
that's good advice.
Mhm.
New stream.
A new concept.
Jump in. There's a
Well, I'm
pause.
surprised nobody has brought up the Uber killing in Arizona. Hey, you guys have been paying attention to that, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, but there was a driver.
That must be on the news.
There was a driver that obviously didn't
Was
react.
asleep.
Was he asleep? We don't know yet. What the police say is they've got video footage. These cars are outfitted with cameras, and so they can see what was coming up on the road. They can see what the backup driver was doing. They can see what's going on in the cockpit. And he made a comment. The guy that was talking about the investigation made a comment saying at this moment there's no indication that the car tried to slow down.
Because it's a safety thing.
Wow, all I'm looking at this as is, I mean, my mind's exploding with all these concepts that are just, I mean, is this backup driver is going to probably end up being liable for this problem, right? Because that's his whole job, is to be a backup driver, right? And if the car didn't even touch the brakes, it sounds like he was taking a nap or texting. I would imagine that's the
Does he
case.
have a brake?
Yeah, he's got full control over the car if he needs to.
He just leaves his hands on.
Yeah.
Oh, this is an auto?
This is self-driving car. That's why this is a big deal. Is this is a self-driving car that just it's the first self-driving car to run somebody over and kill him.
And he's,
But that person was not in the crosswalk either and stepped off the curb very quickly.
Yep.
Yeah.
So
So I don't, that's not a reason to run her over. but-
wait, yeah, no, that's and isn't that's what my mind's exploding with that as well. It's like, wow, all of a sudden we're going to see these incredible fines for jaywalking because in general people want to see self-driving cars. And if that's the way to keep people from getting killed, they're going to start I'm sorry, you guys shake your heads. I'm from a different generation from you. Because I want to text in the car. I want to surf the internet. I want to watch movies or take a nap. Yeah, right. I want the car to drive.
Now we're a generation of I agree with him.
Blaming the pedestrian. Right. I think that what we're going to see come out of this, I mean, whether it's a good idea or not, I think we will see fines for jaywalking and enforcement become extremely high, not for punishment, but for disincentive.
Determined.
That's right. It would deter people from trying to cross where there isn't a crosswalk. Well,
Death is the deterrent.
I think their goal would be, I mean, at some point, death is going to be the deterrent. I think their goal is to prevent that.
Once in Mexico, when the person steps off the curb, they're going to walk behind your car.
Yeah, what's going to happen in Mexico?
This is what I told my wife when we were talking about it. She's like, well, what happened? How? I'm like, well, he pulled a Wymus. They just stepped right out in front of the car.
One of the first tests was the U.S. to the end of Mexico in a driverless car. Years ago, it was successful. Driverless cars will be safer, probably more safer, and definitely friendly. You look at the statistics,
Absolutely.
it's safer, and like
Yeah.
you said, so much more efficient. But if you look at statistics and say, well, let's say how many driverless cars on the road, and this accident, and how many, figure out how many people are driving, and how many accidents of the same type occur, I wouldn't be surprised if it still beats the statistics.
Yeah, no, thank you for being so insightful with your thinking, because that's exactly the case, is that this is an infinitesimally small number compared to the number of accidents that are just happening just every day from human error out there running people over by accident. Yeah, Bill.
My car is semi-autonomous driving. It has a setting that will keep it between the lanes when you go down the highway.
It has a setting that will maintain the distance. If you're in cruise control, it maintains the distance between the car that's going slower. And it has anti-collision. It will slow you right down if you're approaching somebody too fast. It's a Honda Civic, or Honda CRV.
My Toyota has it too.
Yeah, and I love it. I mean, you got to keep your hands on the steering wheel, otherwise it starts complaining to you.
Have you found your ability to nap? Does that affect your ability to nap?
I tell you what it does do. It allows me to actually look around a little bit when I'm driving on the highway. Normally, you got to keep your eye on the road. You can glance over there at something that's interesting. You know,
not run into the truck.
Absolutely, I feel much safer.
If I try to go over the white line
without the
signaling,
it goes
beep 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 and turns the wheel back.
What are you doing? Yeah.
That's a very good point in terms of generation gap. There's we went to see a movie that broke all box office records. We couldn't understand to even get a 2-star rating. That's a proof of the disconnect between young people and our generation. It's almost a complete
Well, and there couldn't help but be, when you look at the way technology has changed in the last 20 years, we live in a completely different world. It's so different from anything else. You've got toilets that are talking to you now, right? That's right. They can order their own toilet paper. You're absolutely right.
That's good. That's a good idea.
They put it in the right way.
Well, you can buy it.
You have to set it to
You can buy it either way. You can designate.
You have a question about VPN, you should ask it. I'll ask it. No, you should ask it now.
She has a question about VPNs.
Yes, go ahead.
I just had broadband installed.
Yes.
And obviously on my TV, I can't get Amazon or some CBS or anything. So my friend told me about a software program called Unlocator.
Oh.
And
I don't think I've heard of that one. Has anybody heard of that?
Search on it, and because I wanted to find out what the ratings were. So they recommended another program. And what it does, it masks your IP address.
Mm-hmm.
So it thinks you're in the U.S. or someplace else, but not in Mexico. And me being just smart enough.
Well,
I don't want to do it. I'm scared.
I am not a user of Unblocker. You're familiar with it? The one that Unlocator. The one that I think a lot of people here are familiar with is one called Smart DNS, and I think a lot of people would recommend that. The Smart DNS gives you like a 30-day trial, so you can play with it beforehand and see if it'll meet your needs.
VPN Express is really good.
Yes, that's the one I use.
Which one?
VPN Express is way better than IMAP.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Way better.
One of the things with the VPNs is that there's more overhead because all your traffic is going to that VPN point.
You lose a couple points.
It goes slower, your connection. Whereas Smart DNS it doesn't use the same technology. It's rerouting very specific traffic. For example, Amazon Prime traffic, Netflix traffic, maybe CBS. But they would have a whole list on their website of the things that you can use as though you're in the United States.
Can you get Amazon and ExpressVPN?
I have not tried that.
I don't think so.
Yeah.
I don't think you can
The
use
big
it.
problem in this day and age with the VPNs is that the addresses that are used by VPNs, these pools of addresses, are very publicly known now. And so services like Netflix will see that you're using one of those VPN IPs, and they'll just say, you're using a VPN, that's not how you're supposed to, it's against our terms of service, we're not going to allow you to use our services, turn off your VPN so that you can use our services.
You also need to shop cities when you're on there. Like the first couple I had, it worked great, and then I thought it was the other one.
Yeah, Netflix works fine.
I,
on my TV, which is all I need right now.
Yeah, but
yeah, but
getting
you're getting Mexican Netflix, which is fine because they have a huge catalog in Mexico. That's what we use too.
Yeah, some of the subtitles are in Spanish, which don't work. I can't change them.
Right, you're getting Mexican Netflix, you're not getting US Netflix. It isn't almost worth spending the money on those VPNs.
Yeah, I
If
was
you're-
just afraid.
Because you're not gonna get Amazon probably.
No, I can't get Amazon.
Right. So it isn't
So
worth spending the money.
Yeah,
the smart
better than
the smart DNS is a service where they are the ones, the onus is on them to make those specific services work for you. That's what they're selling. Is they're selling your ability to access this handful of specific services. And these specific services are trying to work against them. So it's kind of this game of whack-a-mole where they figure out a way to give you that service and you're able to take advantage of it until the service figures out a way to restrict it. And then they figure out another way to give you that service. And then they figure out how to restrict it again.
I've been using ExpressVPN for Netflix since December. I just asked the chat guy, and he says, "Oh, use this one," and it's been working all winter. It hasn't changed.
Yeah, and so that's what's happening in a lot of the VPNs is people will become familiar with like Netflix users and say, "I'm using this for Netflix." It's like, oh well, you need to switch to this city with your VPN because that's not getting blocked right now. And
I just found bestsmartdns.com. It evaluates the 5 what they call the top best ones. Smart DNS is at the top. Getflix. Unlocated is number 4.
DNS, but you're using a VPN.
not for security, but it is better because their whole organization is about trying to give you access as though you're in the United States. So they're constantly fighting against the service to give you access.
So can I just change my TV and leave the computer?
So what you can do with Smart DNS, and I'm sorry, I'm not familiar with these others on this list, but with Smart DNS, you set up an account, you go to it from a computer that's on the same network, and you say turn it on, and then for that moment it's turned on for your network. And so for that moment, anything that's connected to your local network is taking advantage of that Smart DNS.
What,
Now,
even an iPad?
Yeah. Yeah, because what you're doing is you're having authorized the wide area network IP, that IP address that Telmex or Megacable gives you. You're registering that in their DNSs as an IP that wants to receive these services.
This is broadband.
Right.
So it won't kill it.
Well, what
No.
broadband are you talking about?
I'm sorry, what?
What broadband are you talking about?
Installed at my DNS is 34.
Oh, you're doing
using
the
WAN.
wireless. It should have the same effect. I'm just not sure how that infrastructure trickles down. I mean, you might end up authorizing it for a dozen people using the same service. Because there is a wide area network IP address. I just don't know how wide that IP address is. If it's yours specifically, or if it's like 24 people that he's giving service to.
He's using satellites.
But it would work on the same premise. The difference is it might work for everybody that's using his service as well.
So we couldn't get it.
So you don't have a phone line? Oh no.
You don't have a phone line?
Where are you guys in town? Really? And they don't have any more phone lines?
Did you just buy Jane's house? Okay. So he has the satellites on top of Jane's house.
No.
He took them off? Oh, okay.
Oh, okay.
He used to have them on top of
Yeah,
there.
and then Chavo wants too much money out of it.
Well, there you go. You've got limited options.
So Smart
You
DNS is $34.90 a year.
you guys should have a property manager trying to get you a phone line every month of the year. They should be going to Telmex because what Telmex does is the moment somebody gives up a phone line, it's for sale for somebody else. So that you'll have that option. These Wi-Fi connections are sketchy at best. and having a dedicated line would be much better for you as far as internet.
The dedicated line from Telmex gives you a telephone, which is very, very reasonable.
Mhm.
Very handy for rescate, ambulances, police, things like that, but also includes international
What-
long distance.
It's not inconceivable.
And it's
I
only
mean, it just depends on where that house is located.
381 pesos a month with your fiber optics internet in our location. Fiber optics internet. Right over here on the Fairfield Street.
On Avenida E, that's my street.
We had it before where we rented.
No, I'm sorry. I'm on I. I'm on I. Yeah, I'm sorry. I was thinking in Spanish for a moment.
Yeah, you're on I, way
Yeah.
up on I.
Yeah.
You're way down.
You're welcome.
Yeah.
All right.
Something to look at. Are you just renting in the renting? Or you bought a house?
Well, here, let me sign off from this. Since we have come to a conclusion,
Scott,
we're
are we doing it next week?
yes, yeah, that's the plan, and hopefully Horizon will be here and giving us a presentation on smart homes and security. Yeah, that's the plan next week.
Maybe you two will have a self-driving car you can ride. Because two different generations, we're both interested, so.
That's awesome. Well, this is Scott Stimson with International Computer Solutions in the San Carlos Computer Club. We meet here every Tuesday from 9:15 to 10:15-ish to discuss the tech topics of the day. Thank you for joining us. This group is funneling out right now. If you're watching us on the cameras, everybody is starting to go away. They're all heading home. I'd just like you guys to know, if you're looking for computer help here in town or on the internet anywhere, get a hold of my offices at 226-0209 or internationalcs.net. If you're interested in the San Carlos Computer Club recordings of this or podcasts of audio, look for us at scclub.org or search for us wherever you get podcasts by searching the San Carlos Computer Club. Again, this is Scott. Glad to talk to you. Talk to you next week. Tech on. Hello, Jim.